Duelist Kingdom. Probably the season of Yu-Gi-Oh! Everybody knows best, and there's a reason for that. Aside from being the arc most of us first watched, it stood out for playing like a thinly veiled horror show. That might sound strange if you grew up with the 4Kids dub like I did, but even if you had the chance to watch in its original form, you might still have missed just how insidious it gets. We're talking esoteric symbolism that runs disturbingly deep, and most of all, a hidden narrative built around deception and illusion. At the center is our main character, taken on a separate journey to the one on screen, one of a psychic tyrant who goads him into a shamanic-like trial. And yes, this is still Yu-Gi-Oh! So let's ask, how deep was Duelist Kingdom really? Well, the clues to the real meaning of this season are made apparent immediately. After the initial introduction of the major characters in episode 1, episode 2 introduces Pegasus and his company Industrial Illusions, the corporation supposedly behind the creation of duel monsters. The obvious nod to a false reality becomes even stronger when we see corporate deception through Pegasus's plan to take over Kyber Corp by defeating Yugi and restoring the company's image under his own control. But it's his first duel with Yugi that confirms the major theme we'll be witnessing: illusion. After drawing him into a shadow game through a VHS tape, Pegasus toys with Yugi, using monsters that strongly suggest mind control. And after forcing Yugi's entry into Duelist Kingdom to save his grandfather's soul, the stage is set, not just for a tournament, but for a psychological trial. However, before we dive into the hidden ritual we're about to see unfold, it's worth pointing out that even here, all the seeds have been planted to foreshadow later events. Take Pegasus, taken from a mythical creature of Greek mythology, used by the hero Bellerophon on his ride to Mount Olympus, home of the gods. A prideful and arrogant ambition which Zeus crushes by causing Pegasus to stumble and fall. As I'm sure you can already tell, this directly parallels Pegasus's own ambition to play God by bringing back his beloved and the tragedy of his eventual fall. Yet before we can examine his psychology and ultimate goal, we first need to look at the phantasms he's already set in motion, the first obstacles of this initiation. The first, and perhaps most overlooked of these, is the island itself. In literature, the island is often a place where conventional rules are suspended, where normality gives way to spiritual forces. Think of the Odyssey, where each island tests Odysseus in new ways, or The Tempest, where an exiled magician uses illusion to manipulate reality. It seems then, Duelist Kingdom is set up as a microcosm, a space built entirely by him to stage his theatre of deception. Fittingly, the first eliminator sent by Pegasus most overtly matches the theatre he has set up, known as the Impersonator of Death, or whatever you'd like to call him. A villain who masquerades as Ghost Kyber, an angry spirit looking to avenge his loss. But despite having a close duel, Yugi is never shaken by the imposter's attempt at deception. That's because the imposter of death represents the shallowest form of illusion, the illusion of appearances. It's skin deep, easily seen through. Though it's a near copy of the original, anyone with real insight into the truth can clearly see this deception stops at merely tricking the eyes. This is perhaps why we see Yugi reveal his third eye for only the second time so far. The third eye is a common mystical symbol, and is a reference to the Ajna chakra, which literally translates to command and perception, highlighting Yugi's awareness of Pegasus's scheme, the first step into his world of illusion. But Pegasus isn't just testing Yugi's perception, he's escalating it. This early symbolic awakening sets the stage for the deeper journey ahead, and the ongoing theme you will soon see. And that's exactly what Panic represents. The first movement toward a deeper trial. Panic is the first to use a strategy beyond physical appearances. The illusion brought forth here is one of fear, specifically fear of the unknown. Panic utilizes darkness and a deck based on the same theme, done to evoke a specific psychological effect. Here's why. Darkness has always sparked fear in humans because its ambiguity allows us to project almost any objects we fear. This goes beyond physical threats. A black backdrop becomes the perfect canvas for our psychological fears and flaws. And that's exactly what Panic's strategy is built on, counting on the opponent to conjure their most feared nightmares. Yet it's surprisingly not Yugi's wiser spirit that sees through this. with his own lived experience. As we've seen in the show and manga especially, Yugi's history of being bullied is key. The bully is classically a figure driven by insecurity, someone who oppresses others to mask their own fears. This hard-earned wisdom born from pain allows Yugi to easily bypass this next step and move closer to the center of Pegasus's maze. As we approach this next step, the new foes become less and less juvenile, beginning with the Paradox Brothers, an enigmatic name in both the dub and Japanese, already hinting at our heroes reaching a more profound level of illusion. If the walls of deception we've undergone so far are physical facades, fears of darkness, then the Paradox Brothers present the illusion of binary thinking. Binary thinking is the belief that everything falls into one of two categories: good, evil, chaos, order, one, and many. This attitude simplifies complex reality into conventionally clear-cut choices. This is a harder illusion to overcome, since our interactions with the outer world can often seem cut and dry. But when we interact with reality on a deeper level, we of course see the true complexity. Take moral decisions, or even a person. We know they can't be defined as wholly good or bad. In logic, an object can be both one and many. The number 2 is both a singular number and plural, and the brothers are aware of this type of thinking. They present an environment of binaries: 2 brothers, 2 gates, 2 riddles, and 2 choices. To make the comparison even more clear, the duel takes place in a maze, a classic symbol of the unconscious, suggesting as much present in the psychic world as it is the physical. With Yugi coming this far, he comes to understand that overcoming this step is not a matter of choosing just the right answer. Instead, he subverts the maze entirely, using a self-aware trick of his own. He breaks through the illusion, moving one step closer to enlightenment. It's here we see Yugi not just as a duelist, but as a formidable magician. But this was just a prelude. The real test lay just ahead, inside the gates of the castle. So far we've seen Yugi confront different layers of illusion, first of appearances, then of fear, and most recently the illusion of binary logic. Now, he approaches the magician who set this entire journey in motion. But this final stage, and Pegasus himself, isn't so easily defined. At best, he can be said to be the fantasist, one who understands that illusion can shape reality just as powerfully as truth. Pegasus chooses not to dwell in our world. He lives in the world of his own forming, which means a world of his own rules and logic. We see it thematically represented in his deck, which uses the Toon archetype, cartoons being a purposely exaggerated depiction of our reality. But before we fully enter this world in the final showdown, we must understand how Pegasus was driven to set up this environment and become its sorcerer, so we can understand the deeper spiritual lesson at play. Pegasus' story is one of tragedy. After falling in love with his childhood sweetheart, Cecilia, their relationship ends abruptly following their betrothal. Pegasus becomes trapped in the first and third stages of grief, denial, and bargaining. In this state, he travels to Egypt after hearing rumors of magic capable of bringing back the dead. On his journey, he is warned by his spirit that he should avoid the attempt at playing God, but this warning falls on deaf ears. Following Shadi to find out how he received this insight into his own life. It's this moment where Pegasus is given a trial for his disobedience. For not turning back, he will be tested by the Millennium Eye, which slays anyone it deems unworthy. Curiously, Pegasus is deemed suitable. The mystical item even grants his one wish, to see Cecilia, all for a few seconds. A dangerous false hope that further ensnares him in grief. But let's ask why Pegasus is even deemed worthy. Why would the item choose to give power to someone so spiritually unbalanced? The answer lies in the nature of the Millennium Eye itself. It appears to be inspired by the Eye of Horus from Egyptian mythology. In its story, Horus, the son of Osiris, battles Seth, the god who murdered his father. During their fight, Horus loses his left eye. The eye is later restored by Thoth, the god of wisdom, and becomes a symbol of healing and protection. With it, Horus is able to restore order to the world. The irony here then is that the eye, or the Ujja, is supposed to represent restoration. In fact, it commonly appeared in Egyptian funerary offerings. It's clear then with this, Pegasus's baggage around death is why he was chosen by the item. The eye had the power to heal his grief, to offer relief and acceptance. If you have any doubt of this connection, just look at the eye Pegasus is missing. The left, the same missing eye as Horus. Furthermore, the eye is associated with the moon, as the moon's lunar cycles mirrors the eventual opening and healing of the eye. I mention this because of the recurring imagery of the moon throughout the arc. We often catch glimpses of it, often Pegasus gazes upon it, or during Yugi's dream sequence, where it looms over a nightmarish landscape, as his friends and grandfather are sacrificed. But the most overt and perhaps most strangely symbolic sequence in the entire series is what makes this mythological connection unmistakable. After Taya, Tristan and Bakura investigate the castle for evidence of Pegasus's cheating, they find a hole in the glass above the duel arena, which lets in a ray of moonlight. Of course, we then conveniently see a shot of its source, the full moon. What on earth would be the purpose of this? We know Pegasus doesn't cheat with any conventional methods, so why did they choose to include this? Well, we know the eye is tied symbolically to the moon. It seems by letting the celestial body's energy shine through the duel arena, he is creating a ritual space, one where his magic is fully invoked. And if ritualism is in doubt, well, just a few scenes later, we see Pegasus midway through a sacrificial Egyptian ritual. What we're witnessing here is a complete inversion of what Pegasus's item was meant to be. The Ujja is supposed to grant intuition, but Pegasus twists it into a tool for seeing others' souls and exploiting them for his own gain. The moon, while symbolizing intuition and the subconscious, in tarot it also embodies illusion. It's an apt choice of symbolism, when Pegasus clearly wishes to live in one. As it's revealed, he aims to use Kaibakup's dueling technology in order to summon a hologram of his deceased wife, an illusion to settle his grief. So what does this all mean, going into his final showdown? Let's put it this way, this isn't just a battle for whose plans come to fruition, but a clash between the worlds of illusion and reality. Yugi, though he has his own aims, if he wins, he is setting Pegasus free from the grip hold of this alternate world. And we're about to see, in full symbolic force, how that is to play out. The duel starts firmly in Pegasus's favour. His powerful toon cards and his mind-scanning ability seem undefeatable. But everything changes when Yami and Yugi switch minds, making even themselves unaware of the cards they play, and leaving Pegasus completely in the dark. This brings the duel back into contention and forces Pegasus to duel with his own instincts, and with that his toons, that represented surface level trickery, are abandoned and replaced with far darker threats. Dark Eyes Illusionist, Relinquished, and Thousand Eyes Restrict directly reflect Pegasus's own powers. Their escalating mind control abilities symbolize his desperate struggle to maintain his waning illusion. The monsters bear the Millennium Eye, but with increased hideousness, mirroring his own corruption of its power. The Thousand Eyes of his last abomination resembling his own constant surveillance of the island. What also stands out with these monsters is the theme of sacrifice, not of himself, but of others. It reveals how far Pegasus has sunk, manipulating the minds of others to uphold his own deception. But for Yugi, who has now undergone a process of shedding and overcoming illusion, even this final phantasm is surmountable. And when he does so, he begins to truly embody the role of the Pharaoh, the one who restores Ma'at, or Divine Order. While this connection isn't made explicit in the series until much later, Yugi's freeing of mind, his triumph over the corrupted Eye of Horus, and his growing spiritual clarity all foreshadow his eventual conscious alignment with the sacred ideals of Egyptian kingship, embodying the gods and restoring order, a truth that will later be made clear. So what is there to take away from all this? Yu-Gi-Oh's Duelist Kingdom is one of more mysterious arcs. It presents a seemingly obvious plot, but one that undulates with deeper, hidden layers of meaning. At moments, real esoteric insight is brought just within reach of the eye, always hinted at, yet frustratingly never fully spoken of. But it is that subtlety which created such an atmosphere of intrigue for our young minds. Duelist Kingdom for me was a gateway, a stepping stone towards seeing the world at a deeper level. If you enjoyed this, leave a like and subscribe and tell me your thoughts. Thanks for watching.